Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Yountville Town Council meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2017. Welcome to everyone that is in the audience. And I would just like to start off by acknowledging that we have a new configuration, especially with staff, and we see our town slogan behind me here. And so if you're seeing some new looks in here, it's because we have some new looks in here. We're pretty excited with the changes. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Dorman.
Here.
Councilmember Moeller.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here.
Please let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Dorenbecker and Councilmember Durham are excused.
Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have adoption of tonight's agenda. If we could have an action to accept that agenda.
Mayor, for the record, I just want to point out that we have a corrected resolution on the item in the flood control district. There was a typo in the resolution that we needed 2 fiscal years, so I just wanted to acknowledge that you have the replacement resolution, no other changes.
Right, that's item 7D in the consent calendar. Okay, with that, can we have adoption of the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And next we will get started with a recognition, I will call it, not a proclamation. We invite Kate Miller from Napa Valley Transportation Authority to give us an award. We always like that.
It should be.
It should be. If not, he'll come flying out of the back room and make sure. Here, there he is.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. It's really quite an occasion for us to come up here and to acknowledge the great partnership of the town of Yountville in probably our most recent prize project, which is the Oak Knoll section of the Vine Trail. Just a little background on that project for members that are here tonight. That was an $8.7 million project. It is 6 miles that connects the city of Napa to the town of Yountville. And the Napa Valley Transportation Authority will officially act tomorrow on authorizing staff to file a notice of completion on that project. We were fortunate to win a statewide award, and that is the reason I'm here tonight. The California Transportation Foundation is the largest nonprofit transportation organization in the country. It was formed to raise money to help the families of Caltrans workers that were killed in the line of duty, and that it also raises money for scholarships and to encourage young people to study transportation in college. And so it's a really great organization. And annually it has the award event, and it's a very coveted award. And there's a number of awards, but one of them is the Pedestrian and Bicycle Project of the Year Award, and we were up against hundreds of projects. There was 3 finalists, and I think we'll just play the video now, and and the video shows the 3 finalists.
Napa Vine Trail, Oak Knoll segment. Napa Valley Transportation Authority, City of Napa, County of Napa, Town of Yountville, Napa Valley Vine Trail Coalition, G.D. Nielsen, Gelati Bros, Inc. The Oak Knoll segment of the Vine Trail is a 6-mile-long Class 1 facility connecting the city of Napa to the town of Yountville. The project is a public-private partnership between the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, City and County of Napa, Town of Yountville, and the Napa Valley Vine Trail Coalition. The Oak Knoll Vine Trail provides a safe route for 24 schools. The trail connects workers to jobs and to Vine Transit, which provides connections to the ferry, BART, and Capital Corridor Amtrak. Brickletown Streetscape Improvement, Town of Truckee, Easter Sierra Engineering, Spanish Springs Construction, Inc., Q&D Construction, Inc., Hull Ridge and Call, Consulting Engineers and Geologists, KLI Finance. This project is located in historic downtown Truckee along Donner Pass Road and Spring Street. The The project created a community facilities district to fund maintenance, acquisition of railroad and private property easements, installation of sidewalks, landscaping, lighting, plazas, parking, art, and undergrounded utilities. Strong partnerships among property owners and agencies was key.
Well, one of the projects is missing. It was the Mouse Hole project, which is, for those of you who are familiar with Highway 89.
SR 89, Mouse
there we
Hole
go.
pedestrian
Sorry.
and bicycle improvement.
I'm going to try it again. Thank you. This is why. We do have it. Go ahead and
Just say,
continue with
okay,
you,
so
and then I'll see if I can-
the Highway 89 is really constrained by a tunnel, a rail tunnel, and so bikes and pedestrians
SR
actually.
89, Mouse Hole pedestrian.
Do you want to just stop it?
They didn't win. They didn't win anyway.
Yeah, they didn't win anyway. But I mean, it was a great project, and actually, I was a little bit nervous about this one because it added a pedestrian and bicycle tunnel underneath this same rail bridge, so it was pretty amazing. It's on Highway 89, so for those of you familiar with that. But we won, and I am here. Yeah. Bravo us. We came into town in our big, beautiful new Vine bus, and there was probably about 30 of us on the bus, and Mayor Tekel of Napa accepted the award on behalf of all the partners involved, and your staff members, Steve and Joe, were on the bus. And so anyway, it was a great day, and I just wanted to come and congratulate you, and thank you so much for the participation and partnering in such a great way. And I have an award for you.
Great. And I'd like Steve and Joe to join us at the podium to represent the staff and Public Works that made this happen as well, if they would, please. They're a little taller than I am, so this is going to be a challenge.
All three of us are a little tall.
Yeah, all right, let's just go ahead and face the camera over here. Thank you very much. Hey, thank you for recognizing the town of Yountville in this project, and we're going to keep working to make it a great path. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Next up, we are going to recognize July as Parks and Recreation Month, and I invite Samantha Holland, our Park and Recs Director, to join me at the podium for proclamation. Welcome. This is a proclamation designating July as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the town of Yountville. Whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our community, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of Yountville and the Napa Valley. Whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. Whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. Whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. Whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas the town of Yountville recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor, on behalf of the Yountville Town Council, do hereby proclaim the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month in the town of Yountville. So, congratulations. Yes.
I'm in the pictures.
This time you're in it. One more for Michelle. Okay. All right. Park and Rec?
Yeah.
Please do.
So thank you for that. It is my absolute pleasure to come to work here every day and work with the amazing people and team and community members that I get to work with. And obviously our parks and our recreation facilities wouldn't be what they are without Joe and the Public Works Department and all of the support from all of you, as well as the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. But we have a spectacular place to be here, and I think a lot of that comes down to the support that we've received for what we do, which is truly for our residents, keeping our parks beautiful and programming the heck out of that community center. So I thank you very much for this, as does my staff. So thank you.
Thank you. It's always great when we can start off a meeting with a couple really positive, fun recognitions, so thank you. Next up is public comment on items not on tonight's agenda. I know we do have a couple people interested in addressing the council, and I'll start off by saying we do expect a staff report later in the meeting regarding the power outage and a message from PG&E, but you're still welcome to address that because it's an item not on tonight's agenda. So, and I know we also have Mr. Bundy who's here as well to make a comment. So, please come before the council.
Thank you. I'm Alman Bundy. I live in Rancho de Napa. I'm here tonight directly because the town residents spoke here in this forum a couple of weeks ago and asked the town to reconsider the idea of a fenced off-leash park in Vineyard Park. I'm here to ask the town council not to reconsider that idea, first of all, because it was never considered in the first place in front of the council. So I'll correct that in a second, but also because that would not be the correct way to bring that idea back before the town council. Last time it spent a lot of time with the Parks and Recreation Committee before it ever got to the town council. The town of Yountville town council got it right 7 years ago when they voted unanimously 5-0 to reject a dog park in the town at Veterans Park. The reason the Vineyard Park, the one that the advocate is asking for this time, was not considered that evening is because the Park and Recreation Commission had already voted not to consider any other parks in the town because the parks were all close to residences and were unsuitable for many other reasons. So Veterans Park was the only park left for consideration. And like I said, the town council got it right. Can you imagine what our beautiful Veterans Park would look like today if we had a dog park in the middle of it? I was involved and attended all the Park and Recreation meetings, town council meetings leading up to that vote. Since the person advocating for a dog park specifically targeted Vineyard Park, some of my comments tonight concern that location but would apply to many of the other locations, parks in our town. Since I live right next to Vineyard Park, I would be very negatively impacted by a dog park. Here's some bullet points to consider. And the first one may seem out of order, but I want to make this point. There's already a beautiful dog park at Alston Park on Dry Creek Road in Napa. Many town residents already take their dogs there. I have driven to Alston Park, taking the back roads, Solano Avenue to Orchard Avenue to Dry Creek Road, never on the freeway. 6.8 mile drive from my house at Rancho de Napa, and it took me 10 minutes. Every day, residents drive to Napa for the grocery store, cleaners, pharmacy, and many other activities. Why not drive 10 minutes to let your dog run? Dog parks can cause a lot of problems, as a short stroll across the internet will reveal. Noise, traffic, unsanitary conditions, smells, aggressive dogs, and the list goes on and on. I have a lot of resource materials on these problems that I'd be happy to provide at appropriate time to the appropriate people if this goes forward. Who's going to make sure the dogs park rules are followed? That everyone cleans up after their dog? That aggressive dogs or aggressive behavior is restricted? Many dog owners are responsible. Some, as I'm sure you know, our streets and parks are not. What about the liability if some dog or someone is bitten or injured? When the town builds a dog park, we open ourselves to nuisance and negligence liabilities. as it is an official town operation. What about insurance costs? Do we want to build a dog park and invite the whole world to bring their dogs to our town and our dog park? The hotels in this town will tell their customers about our dog park and how to get there. For instance, can you imagine the traffic, in addition to our own local dog owners driving in and out of Oak Circle, which is the only way to get to Vineyard Park? There's already a problem there with people who are employees parking on the road and parking in the parking set aside for the little park there. There's no parking there anymore because employees are parked there all the time. If a dog park costs $50,000, as was suggested at a meeting of the commission, the Park and Rec Commission years ago, and costs $5,000 a year to maintain and operate, then the unfunded liability over 10 years is $172,910, using a 6% cost of capital. I checked again today, as I did 7 years ago, and according to the Animal Control Office in Napa, there are currently 8,464 dogs licenses active in Napa County. Only 148 active dog licenses, however, in Yountville. This is a lot of money and potential problems to benefit so few residents, assuming all of them would use it. The city of Napa has 53 parks and only 2 allow dogs to be off leash. That's Shirtleaf and Alston Park, if you want to know. Both these parks are several times larger than all the parks in our town put together. In fact, they may be larger than the town of Yountville. They're also separated from residents by wide streets, sidewalks, and other buffers. Other Napa County residents will use our dog park if we have one, much like they use the children's play area in Yountville Park. I'm particularly pitching no dog park at Vineyard Park. Dog park there would be a dramatic impact on my quality of life and my neighbors. It would have a serious impact on the value of our homes. It removes existing green space. I often see children running through the area, teenagers using it to make movies, amateur movies with little cameras. Local clergy have actually performed weddings in the exact location that this dog park is proposed. This site becomes very damp in our rainy season with large puddles persisting for days. And this past year it was underwater, several feet of water, several times. It's also part of the floodplain and part of the flood control plan. Since I live right next door to Vineyard Park, I would be very seriously impacted. But a dog park anywhere in our town is going to seriously impact some residents somewhere. It's going to be a burden to the city and to the residents. And we have a very small dog population that could possibly benefit from it. We just don't need a dog park in Yountville. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bundy. Who else would like to address the council on an item not on the agenda? Yes, go ahead. You had your hand up first. Benefits of sitting in the front row.
Pardon? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm Nancy Welty. I live in Rancho de Napa. And I was having a card party on Sunday and a dinner. And I had one of my guests that was just totally so much affected by the heat and the outage that I started calling around and found out that very few places were. Bellagio across the street, just had all full power. Everybody except for from the chamber down. I didn't get all the right information. I did write a letter in my anxiety to get all this information about our vulnerable residents and everything out on paper, so I already gave the letter to the Sun to publish. But I'll just go to the conclusion. That is, when I called San Jose and talked to David McBride about the PG&E, he said it was a device failure that caused us to have 234 homes in Rancho and 89 in Gateway, most of them without power. I understand some of them did. I don't understand electricity. I know we flip the light switch and there it is. And, turn on the air conditioner and there it is until you don't have it. And then, it really got hot. It was like close to 90 in my house, and I have dual pane windows. And 2 of my friends that were there did not, so they were glad to be there. We tried to keep it cool. So my conclusion is, I called the Register to tell them about it, and they did kindly send out a reporter who actually came and did a little story about it. And I thought he was very kind and talked to people and everything. My conclusion is our device that was out not as good as Bellagio or Ranch Market, or that whole grid. I don't understand any of that. But we all deserve, because we're there to retire in safety and comfort and security, we deserve to have the best device possible, if that's the problem. I'm sure millions of dollars go from Yountville into the PG&E, you know, over the years and everything. So that was my conclusion. I have a lot to learn about electricity and where it comes from and what it does and what grid we're on and who's on a fuse and who's on a device and how any of it works. But I think we need to have the best device possible. Gary Grant said one of the problems is PG&E considers 6468 Washington Street one home. And Gateway the same way, one home. So if power is going to go out, is one home crucial? Well, if you depend on a lift to lift your chair up to get in and out of your house, if you're on oxygen, if you have dementia and you don't know, you know, what's happening, why am I so hot? Why am I burning up? People don't understand it. So I think people really don't understand the real vulnerability of some of the people in our parks, senior mobile home parks. You know, all of us that live there, the town of Yountville is not really friendly to us. And I did write a letter to the Sun some time back about, you know, the excess. If you can eat here, you can eat at the taco truck. Thank God for the taco truck. I understand they tried to turn that down too. And if you want to buy something, you have to go to Napa. And I'm afraid Napa is trying to go the same direction. Big hotels, high-end restaurants and everything. Then where will we go? Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest. And thank you very much. And I think we need a better device that covers that area with the mobile home parks. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your comments. And as I mentioned earlier, we're planning on having a staff report and comment from PG&E later in the evening, but I think we can address it
If you would prefer,
to a degree
I could do
now,
that now.
and maybe even before we have any other comments from residents, because there's some inaccuracies that have been shared about what did happen, who's responsible, what is the park owner's responsibility for protecting the residents of the private mobile home park, things like that. So maybe, Steve, if you can make some comments.
If you would, Mayor, Council, members of the audience, I will provide. The town has reached out to PG&E representatives, both on the intergovernmental relations side and on the operations side. So the first thing we need to make sure everybody understands is that the power, electricity, and gas is operated by Pacific Gas and Electric and is managed by the Public Utility Commission and is not regulated by the town. So we interface in terms with the utility on service issues. So on Sunday, PG&E has reported to me, and they're working on a further evaluation. But first of all, they had over 200,000 outages in the Bay Area alone. So this was not limited or isolated, and there were significant outages included in Napa County. They opened 12 emergency division centers and 2 regional emergency operations and mobilized and moved their staff resources. And what it is from their standpoint, the PG&E grid that you referred to actually is, in this particular case, the community is divided up into multiple grids, and there are a number of devices and transformers that can go into it. And I'm not an electrician, so I'm not going to be able to speak intelligently as to what PG&E indicated that the outage started at 2:45. Crews worked to identify the cause of the outage, make repairs, and restore service to customers. The power was restored at 7. Total time without power was 4 hours and 15 minutes. The investigation determined the power outage was due to the heat-related equipment failure. So that equipment was replaced. After several days of high temperatures, heat-related outages may occur when equipment doesn't have time to cool down and become limited due to extreme heat. The town is aware that in some cases the southern end of town seems like it has had more incidents, so I've asked them to look at it. It turns out that it's There's been 6 outages over the last 5 years, resulting from the earthquake, a lightning strike, the windstorm, the broken pole that we all remember with the windstorm, and a metallic balloon in this heat incident. And they pointed out that we've actually had, so in some cases they would say some of this is dumb luck, just the number. I also want to point out that this particular grid affected South of Oak Circle, which includes Red Restaurant, Ad Hoc Restaurant, Hotel Yountville, Rancho de Napa, Gateway, Veterans Memorial Park, St. Joan of Arc Church, Hopper Creek Apartments, and continued into the unincorporated county. So it was not like somebody cherry-picked a location and said, here. So it's just not the way the grid works. So when the device failed, it popped, and then it had to be replaced. And many of you may recall we occasionally have incidents where a vehicle accident may hit a power pole and it knocks the transformer out. The grid keeps getting smaller and smaller on localized areas so that they can isolate and reroute electricity. So in working with our governmental affairs, we're going to be monitoring this, but they have indicated to us that they hear our concern. We have a very vocal council when it comes to sharing their concerns. The Public Works Director and I are very vocal with PG&E. We also have to understand that in some cases with the electrical system and utility, there are things that happen. In this particular case, it was a fairly significant outage affecting the whole region, but pockets of the region. So with that, if there aren't any questions, that's the briefing that I have based on information that PG&E has given.
And I'll invite other comments. I just wanted to add, having spoken directly with Mark Van Gorder, who is the public affairs representative for Napa and Marin counties, in addition to what our town manager just described, my concern that I expressed in the very beginning part of the conversation was about this issue of the number of meters versus the number of residents. And it was brought up in the previous comment. For many years now, we have stressed to PG&E as a town, as the council, that they identify that we're talking about several hundred residents, not just 2 meters. They know that. They have changed their management and their evaluation of priorities based on that. They know that we have an aged population, principally in that area, that have issues in some cases that are similar to a hospital situation. They prioritized their response and their repair of the outage based on that. I was rather vocal in my frustration because in the Napa Register, the story was kind of written that they treated us as, well, it's just 1 meter at Rancho and 1 meter at Gateway, so that's only 2 meters impacted. That was not really clearly written and stated. My concern was that we had lost the understanding with PG&E, but I was assured that everyone that needs to know that knows that. It's also important that our public safety recognizes that that fact. So that was a little bit of a misrepresentation of what PG&E can and cannot evaluate. So I just wanted to make that clear as well. I want to invite any other residents that want to speak to this item. I think, Violet, you had your hand up first the first time. Second the first time.
I wanted Nancy to go first.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Oops. Sometimes I like to make light of a little something. Nancy said it pretty well. Thank you, Steve, and I think we understand sort of what's happening. But I just returned from Middletown. I have a sister who lives up there, and she treated me to lunch. And on the way down, I got to thinking, riding that winding road coming over Mount St. Helena. I said, the town of Yountville is really like a baseball team. And I was thinking about who plays the various parts. Now, I know the 2 teams we have right now in this area aren't doing too well, but I want us to do better. I got thinking, I said, okay, baseball team, pitchers, the restaurants, catchers, catching staff, the hotels, first base, the winery industry in town, the shops and some of the tasting rooms, second base, other retail in Yountville, third base, the school, the sheriff's department, the post office, and the bank, which we kind of treat in a little different way. Shortstop, veterans home. right field and center field, non-mobile home residences in town, from condos to Washington Park to maybe the Burgundy Commons to whatever. Right field is played by the mobile home residents, Nancy, me, and some of the other folks that are here. Umpires, you, John, and the rest of your team, Samantha, your staff, Steve, and all you guys, you're umpiring. I am appealing to the umpire. Okay, it seems that those of us who are playing right field who want to be part of the team, we really do want to be part of the team. We love Rancho de Napa. We love Yountville. That's why we live here. But those of us living in right field, we have the impression that you've given us some bum equipment. It's awfully hard to play the game of baseball with all of the other positions unless the umpires insist that somehow or other those of us in right field have the right equipment.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, Nancy. Please, we have protocol that we follow here, so we don't really allow cheering or booing or anything else. We got your message. So, thank you. Yes, Devin?
Thanks. Devin Avery, also Rancho de Napa. If I would just ask you to double check on the issue of the one residence, 1 meter situation, because I had a long conversation with Gary Grant, the manager at Rancho de Napa, and he was quite clear that Sunday he was again told on multiple conversations, I'm looking at the computer, you're one house. And he said, we're 200 and something houses. And they said, no, sir, you're wrong. You're one house. So I understand that it seems like that is fixed, and maybe it is on some issues. Maybe the right hand doesn't necessarily know what the left hand is doing. But I would ask you not to drop it at this point and make the assumption that that's been fixed, because we have gotten different messages. And I think that's where the comment in the newspaper came from, is there were more than one person that told Gary, no, sir, you're one.
Okay, Nancy, you've had your chance to speak, so thank you.
So all I'm asking is, don't just assume that that issue has been taken care of. If you would please follow up on it again and again if necessary. Thanks.
Thanks. And you can count on the fact that we're not taking anything for granted, either staff or the council. They have different ways of speaking at PG&E. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. They speak in meters in situations like this. They don't speak in people, and we don't think that makes sense either. But we've made it, I know Steve has stressed multiple times, as did Joe, and me again today, stressed the understanding of the actual circumstances and the sensitivity of our residents there, because it is a situation that's not just the average residents. These are residents that do in some cases have special medical needs that need to be considered. So any others? Yes, Pam.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to bring up another point about this power outage. When the power went out, we don't have a mobile device. So the telephones were down, the computer was down. We had absolutely no idea that the community center was open. And I think one of the things that needs to be addressed is somehow getting the word out. A lot of people in the park do not have mobile devices either. And there's a lot of various medical conditions that everyone else has pointed out. And so it's something, just another point that we might be able to work on.
I think if I could address that, there's a couple of things. One, we always look at ways to improve communications, but I also point out in this particular case, the park had a significant failure in their internal block captain network system, and we rely heavily on that because we don't have the staffing, especially on a weekend, to come in. So certainly I think the park and your residents need to take stock of what's your internal communications, because we were using those processes when we activated the cooling center, had similar challenges with Gateway. And again, I want to stress that this one, when you're looking at a situation, while it's impactful, we're talking about a 4-hour outage. The town opened a cooling center and there's a level of response in a 4-hour incident that is reasonable. So I just want us, we need to put a little bit of stock into that as well. And we were prepared as a team evaluating what the longevity of that situation. We're challenged because communications is a unique factor, and when the power goes out, so we will be having conversations, and I certainly would encourage the home group to be talking about what you can do, because if the network we're counting on to use isn't going to work, then we definitely are going to have to come up with some very different approaches.
I agree with you. It is a two-pronged system, and yes, our system failed. Everybody seemed to be out of town or not at their home. I know Jim is an assistant block captain. We got home, we were at the theater, and we got home probably 15 minutes, and there was no message, even when the power was resumed. The other point is, you never know how long the power outage is going to be. Yes, in hindsight, you can say it was a 4-hour power outage, but when I looked later, the communications were that the power would. They said that the power would come back on at 11:45, and in fact, it came on at 7-something. But you just never know. And had we known if it was going to go on, we would have really worked at getting some of the people who were in distress to the community center. But I didn't know that it was open. So is this going to be something, if there's a power outage and it appears that it's going to be a significant period of time, can you say that we could come here at the community center?
Well, first thing I'm going to say is that, again, most everything is situational dependent, because if this was a power outage and the temperature was 75 degrees, we have a very different scenario. So I don't want to, I think we need to evaluate the facts based on the situation. What I would say that as a general theme is that if there is a significant situation, whether a cooling center is needed, a warming center, as was the case, yes, it would be reasonable to anticipate that the town will be, with reasonable notice, opening the community center, because one of the values of the community center is that it serves as our emergency shelter. Now, I still have residents that tell me they don't know where the community center is because they thought they were supposed to go to the clubhouse. So we definitely need your help in your community clarifying some of those things.
Right. Thank you very much.
That was one other point I wanted to bring up, is that you have a private property owner that is the manager of your park, as is with Gateway, and there is certainly responsibility on the park ownership, to make sure that the residents are safe and protected, and the preparedness for outages falls in some part, we can debate how much, falls on the park owner. The town is more than happy to support all of our residents, so it's not that we're going to turn our backs on the need, but there is a responsibility there that I think you all should bring up to your park ownership. We have a generator here at the community center for emergencies. I don't think there's a generator at the clubhouse at Rancho or at Gateway, and so that can be a priority. There will be another outage in another circumstance. You can count on that, whether it's a natural disaster or an accident, a failed piece of equipment. Just like an earthquake, we're encouraged, have a preparedness kit in our homes. Some of us do it, some of us don't. When that situation occurs, those that are more prepared than others are able to withstand whatever impact. So as Steve rightfully pointed out, our staff mobilizes immediately into the level that's necessary based on the conditions. So it's hard to say, if the power ever goes out, do this, this, and this, because we don't know what the reasons are. We'll never know what the length of outage might be. It's certainly better that it was 7 p.m. and not the 11:45 they anticipated, but we just don't know. And I know that PG&E recommends everyone is prepared for at least 24 hours or more of self-sufficiency, whatever that means for an individual. In some cases, it's just having water in the house. In some cases, it's having backup electricity or more. So those are things that we'll all be discussing, I'm sure, in the next few days, and we're not out of this heat wave yet. We may have other outages that occur. So we'll be as prepared and hopefully get messages shared as quickly and as broadly as possible. So any other members of the public want to comment on this item or any others not on our agenda? Okay. I think we've been able to share what we were going to share later in the meeting, but it's good that we were able to talk through it now with all of you here in the audience. Yes, we are flexible. I think even there'll be a couple additional points to make from my conversation with Mr. Van Gorder that is specifically pertinent to the outage here, just kind of some of their internal processes that we can just discuss.
I just think it's important when I hear some of the commentary. I just want to remind right field presenter that some of first base, second base, a lot of position players were affected by the outage, and I think you also need to be sensitive to that some of that is self-reflected and directed on how you choose to view yourself rather than a certain reality, and I think that needs to be shared with others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Bundy?
I'm a resident of Rancho de Napa also, and while I share the frustrations we all have when something like this happens, fortunately, for whatever reason, I had air conditioning in my house. We had a number of people down there that sit with us because their houses were too hot. But my experience has been that the town of Yountville has been very responsive to our situations. You don't have a magic wand. You can't make things happen for PG&E. I remember back to my first days in this, coming back to Yountville after an absence of many years, about 10 years ago, and having this council vote to include the Gateway and Rancho de Napa in the Yountville plan as senior housing and protected our manufactured housing to keep it from being sold out from under us. I can remember a number of things that the council has done over years, and the fact that be very few towns with the short outage we had today, we had last on Sunday, would have a cooling center open as fast. And I did see signs up at our mailboxes and on the doors of the clubhouse that there was cooling here at this center. So I just want you to know that there's frustration here for sure. I understand that, but I don't want it to be unfairly fall on the town when there are other players involved, without naming them all, who have a lot of responsibility here, including ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bundy. I think that does it for public comment tonight. Thank you all for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. And if there is an incident coming up, you'll be hearing from the town for sure. So with that, we'll move ahead to our consent calendar. And it was already recognized that there was a typo correction in item 7D. With that, is there consideration for action on the consent calendar items A through G?
I move approval of the consent calendar items A through G.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, I guess we're supposed to be using our electronic voting, aren't we?
No, mine's not.
Just moving right along. Okay, please vote.
Margie, is yours?
Well, I hit join. It said I joined. Now it's connecting again, so I got disconnected. All right.
Thank you.
Feel confident in this vote. That passes 3-0. And just for understanding in the public, because we are only a 3-person council tonight, any votes that take place will need to be 3 unanimous votes one way or another. No presentations left. We have no public hearings, but we do have a list of administrative regular items. So I will welcome our first regular item, which is our 2017-18 operating budget.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. So I'm here today to cover a very brief summary of our budget and budget adoption that is before you tonight. You might recall that you met for several hours twice in May to cover the details of our budget that is before you tonight. We met on May the 10th and May the 22nd. So the first thing that I want to report is that we have a $16.3 million budget for all of our funds, general fund, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, and our debt. So that's the entire budget. And 33% of that, or $5.4 million, is for salary and benefits 3% is for the PERS normal cost and unfunded accrued liability, which we talked about, which is the gap that we have to backfill now when PERS fund doesn't perform as expected. And we reported to you that we would be doing an increase for salaries of 3.3% per CPI based on our labor contracts that we've got agreed upon. As in the past, we're also going to be putting 14% aside for the OPEB rate to fully fund the ARC. And in this budget, we have 30 full-time employees, 2 which are limited term. So just some very brief highlights for you that you've heard over the last 2 workshops, but to highlight here. Now, this budget includes $175,000 for the second year of the general plan, $200,000 for the records management program, and a capital projects budget of $727,000. We've got some new funds here this year that we're going to be programming into the future. $61,000 is for the Facilities Repair and Replacement Fund. $90,000 is for Fleet Tools and Equipment Replacement Fund, and I'm just using round numbers for ease of speaking. $300,000 is for the PERS Unfunded Accrued Liability Reserve Fund, which we'll be working to continue to grow. And really good news, $7.6 million, which is 46% of our total budget, is what represents our reserves. So these are some pie charts, and I know that for the folks watching at home, it's a little bit tough to read, but these are all available on our printed budget and will be available online soon, that summarize the allocations. And this is for the general fund. So this is $7.6 million and their allocations where they're assigned for the different contingencies, the arts, the claims and insurance retention, the emergencies, the unassigned fund balance. And this is the $10.5 million pie chart, which shows our revenues that come in. Obviously, we all know that in this town, our revenues are set up a little differently than in other communities, where other communities, the really big piece of the pie chart is usually property tax, followed by sales tax. And in this town, it's TOT, which is about 62% of our budget. Then sales tax, and then property tax. So property tax is 13% and sales tax is 14%. And general fund expenditures, so our revenues are estimated at $10.5 million and our general fund expenditures are estimated at $10.1. So this budget before you is balanced and also expects to underspend based on the revenues that are projected. And our revenues are really conservative, in line with what we've done in the past, so we expect to end really well in the coming year. And this pie chart just shows basically the allocation of how the general fund expenditures are going to take place within the different departments. So in the coming year, the things that you can expect to hear from us further updates on mostly relate to 3 things. That there could be more, but I can tell you for sure that you'll continue to hear more from us on PERS rates. We'll continue to monitor those as the PERS evolution continues. And then, as you've heard before, we plan to provide you with a more detailed report on the GAN limit and the review. We know that an election preparation is required of us. Our GAN limit is going to expire, and we need to make sure that we're ready for the next process related to the election and the GAN limit on that. So we'll be working to review that and brief you on that as well. And we are very close to concluding our utility rate study, which is really important to our enterprise funds. And so we'll be working to present you an update in the coming months and move toward possible adoption of rates and a new rate structure. So with that, this concludes my presentation. As I mentioned before, the budget is balanced and we expect to actually spend under the projected revenues at this point. And I'm happy to take questions. We plan to have copies available of the document by the end of the month, which is June 30th, and have it available on our town website as well.
Thank you. You had me concerned when I opened the budget document. It was 325 pages.
Oh, sorry. Well, it is long, and it is a great read, really, if you want to take it home.
Yes, we'll read that through the 17-18 year, I think.
Sounds good.
Questions of the staff report? Councilmember Dorman?
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. And this will just show that although I have read some, I haven't read all of it. In the document, is there somewhere a total figure for all that we have paid in years past and expect to pay in the upcoming year for our contract services?
Not in aggregate, but we can get that information for you in our financial system if you need it. Each line item in every department has a contract services budget. So it would be rather manual by going through the budget, but every department that has contract services has a contract services line item, so you can see it that way. But we can aggregate it for you and provide that to you at another time.
Well,
and the budget has about 3 years worth of data that's there for each department, but we can get you a higher roll-up figure.
Okay, thanks. And then the full-time employees are going from 28 to 30, and they're gonna, one is a groundskeeper, right? And one is a new management fellow? Am I right about that?
Well,
Or,
I'll let Steve talk about
that might be a question for our town manager.
If I could, what we're growing one management analyst position, and we're adding a facility and grounds worker primarily in parks and maintenance. And then we have 2 limited duration internship fellowships, one working on backup support and doing some of the day-to-day stuff funded actually out of in the budget, but out of the general plan allocation, and then one that's funded out of the manager's office.
Okay, so are we going to end up with 32 then, or just
No,
30?
It's 30
it's
total.
30, of which 2 are the limited
2 are the
duration.
limited, okay. And then the salaries that you showed us, I think it was about 5.4 million. Does that include the projected 335,000 for part-time?
No.
So our actual personnel outlay is closer to 5.7?
Yes.
Okay. And then I noticed that, still focusing again on salaries, and I think I remember the reason for this, but I want to make sure that I do, is there is a pretty significant increase year over year from last year. And isn't that because of our PERS or OPEB obligations? Aren't we trying to pick up some ground on that?
So if we actually compare the estimated column, so the adopted budget for 16-17, which is the year we're in now, didn't include about $200,000 of the unfunded accrued liability. Then we came back to the council, I want to say earlier this year, and we adjusted the budget with your permission so that we could cover the cost of PERS for the unfunded accrued liability, which increased everything by about $200,000 for the department. So if you compare the estimated column 16-17 to 17-18, the growth really isn't too much. And I'm sorry, it's not right at my fingertips right now. It has been the last 4 or 5 months, but right now it's not what the growth has been. But I'm happy to go over that with you in more detail if you'd like.
If I could you are correct. But one of the big chunks when you look at the major increase in the general government is our PERS and the establishment of the PERS UAL reserve, because you see the current year payment and the establishment of the reserve. So that in itself is 600 and some thousand.
Yeah,
so
that's
you're
correct
when you look at the delta of about a $900,000 increase. Most of it is taken in addressing that and the proactiveness of establishing the PERS reserve.
Could you just explain for anyone that might be listening without the acronyms, so there's an understanding of what the accrued liability in PERS means?
PERS, currently PERS has a process. We have a employee rate, and I will point out all of our employees pay a employee share, which is 8%, and then we have an agency rate that varies approximately 19 to 20% over the last couple budget cycles. And then based on annual performance or lack thereof, based on our actual needs and impacts, they send us an additional bill based on the actuarial projections.
I'm talking, explain what PERS stands for and explain
Public
what
Employees Retirement System, and then the unfunded liability is the UAL. So what we're trying to do is, the council, we're being very conservative in using our better economic situation to pay and to put money ahead to deal with what has been advised could be a worsening or an increased PERS cost, the retirement from the state system.
Did you want to expand on that, Maria?
So the PERS unfunded accrued liability is basically an additional bill that we receive from PERS. So let me start from maybe backtrack 2 years ago at least, PERS was sending each agency one bill, of which most agencies would pay on a monthly basis to PERS. PERS changed the way that they were calculating what the what their member cities owed because of the fund performance. So when the funds didn't perform based on their projections, they saw a gap. And to make up that gap loss, they created what they call now the unfunded accrued liability, and they decided that their member agencies should share in that loss and help them make up that gap. So now PERS gives its member agencies the option to pay that unfunded accrued liability, that gap, in 12 payments or one annual payment. And when you make an annual payment, at least for the town, you can save about $10,000. So we're going to make an annual payment so that we can save our general fund coffers $10,000. Cities that can't do that pay over the course of 12 months and still make up the difference. But the UAL is what we're trying to we're budgeting to pay for that this year, and also budgeting to develop a savings fund, which will in the future months come back to you so that we can develop the right kind of trust reserve fund and actually grow the savings, so that should the UAL fund continue to have dips, and we know that it will, we'll have a place to draw those funds on and have a nice stable general fund for the rest of our departments and continue operating services as expected. Right now, we know that the PERS UAL fund, the PERS funds were supposed to give us a return of 7.5%. They then provided a report, thank you, that was updated in midstream of us creating the budget, and they informed us that they were going to roll back to 7%. So we already know that the fund is going to have a loss. And I'll leave it at that, because I could go on and on about it, and I really shouldn't. It's just, it can be lengthy, and I want to be better prepared should you want to have that discussion. But that's the detail on the PERS unfunded accrued liability.
And the forecasting that you don't want to get into yet is just projected to be worse and not get any better than the 7%. So it's smart for us to be proactive about saving some funds in anticipation of that kind of future.
Yes. Presently, the towns, so every city across California who's a member of PERS has a sort of like a solvency, I'm forgetting the right term right now, but a funding position or a score with PERS. Ours is pretty good, and so based on where you are in that pool, impacts what kind of performance you're going to get. And so we, right now, over the next 5 years, based on today's numbers, can expect to see between 27 to 33% in the rate that we have for PERS, and right now it's 27%. But that's based on right now, and every time that the economy changes and the PERS funds change, that can change too. So it's what we're always watching. But that's present day scenario as we speak, and that's about as good as I can make it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Questions? Seeing no public remaining in our audience, we'll just go ahead and continue consideration by the council. As a reminder to anyone listening, we have had extensive dialogue on the budget, many sessions and many detailed conversations and presentations by the staff. So we have very thoroughly discussed what we have before us tonight. So in case this is a fairly brief conversation tonight, it doesn't mean that we have not analyzed this quite thoroughly. So if there's any other consideration by the council, or if there's a motion to be had, I would welcome that. And if you're making a motion or a second, please verbalize that.
Mine keeps coming and going, so.
Yours is here for me as a mover.
All right.
So there is a motion by
I will
Councilmember
make
Mueller.
a motion that we approve resolution number 17-3419, adopting and approving the 2017-18 operating budget appropriations GAN limit for fiscal year 2017-18, salary ranges, and reaffirming existing fiscal policies, which include the general finance policy, the town investment policy, use of long-term debt policy, OPEB trust investment policy, fund balance policy, utility enterprise rate policy, and use of drought water reserve policy.
And I will second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously, 3-0. Thank you very much. Maria, thank you, and thank you to all the staff that put this 325 pages together.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And I will give Joe just a moment to take the seat for our next item, which is the capital improvement program. And we will start off with the staff report from Joe.
Thank
Welcome.
you, Mayor Dunbar, members of the council. It's my pleasure tonight to present you with the resolution to approve the town's 5-year capital improvement program for the fiscal year 2017-18 through 21-22 and determine the consistency of the capital improvement program with the general plan. Just for a little background, we have had this particular plan in front of this body twice in mid-February, February 19th to be exact, and again in May 22nd and during the budget workshop. We also had it in front of the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee in early January. Over the past 5 fiscal years, approximately $18.8 million has been spent on capital improvements, including $2.65 million in the current year. Projects for this year have included the Veterans Memorial Park renovations, the Yountville Crossroad reconstruct, and the Yountville Crossroad water main replacement. Excuse me. The total budget for fiscal year 17-18 is $1.4 million. This includes both general fund, gas tax, and enterprise fund. We use our CIP as a planning document and identifies future capital project needs and coordinates the financing and timing of those needs in a manner with available funding sources and maximizes return on investment to the public. As the annual CIP budgets are prepared, projects and priorities are identified and incorporated into our comprehensive rolling 5-year plan, which you have before you this evening. The CIP includes projects and programs that are continuing to be developed through community input and town council policies and priorities. This year reflects a shift from our past years in which we had several major projects in each fiscal year. This year we will focus on planning for the upcoming Measure T funds while still continuing to make progress on our annual programs such as the ADA accessibility program and our streetlight replacement program. The ADA accessibility program is tied directly to the council adopted ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, and the streetlight replacement program was developed to continue to replace and update town-owned streetlights. These are programs that require an annual funding source to continue to make progress on these projects. We will also begin planning for the comprehensive street maintenance funding program, Measure T, which will begin officially in January 2018. This program will include a funding mechanism for our annual paving programs, and so we're going to begin to plan for that in anticipation of receiving some of those funds in late 2018. Projects for this upcoming fiscal year include the pickleball and tennis courts projects, the Washington Street guardrail replacement project, our ADA accessibility program, which will fund various compliance improvement projects throughout town, and we're in year 2 of that 12-year plan. As I said, we have 5 major projects on the list for this evening, for this year, and several other minor projects, including continuing with the town council chambers upgrade and renovation. The majority of these projects are maintenance related and are not discussed specifically in the general plan. It is recommended that the council review our CIP and its relative to the general plan consistency. I would also like to mention that while you will approve this list and the budget, most of these projects will come back before this body and Parks and Rec Advisory Committee as well for project approval. So you all will have a chance to approve the project to go out to bid and then project award. The town manager does have some signing authority. However, it's very limited. The majority of our projects exceed that signing authority the majority of the time, I would say is a fair statement. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or any questions you may have.
So before I ask for council questions, to that point, we're putting in these projects and having a plan, kind of a master strategic plan for all these projects. As you said, many of them will be reaffirmed and formal action will be taken individually as they come up in the schedule, but this is a bit of a living document where things may change in priorities, they may change in scope, or they may, some could be eliminated, some could be added potentially, but this is what we're basing our framework on.
That's correct, Mayor. As all of you well know, up on as a council, you've had many opportunities to refine the project, both during the award and bidding process and throughout the process of developing the project. So those statements are completely true.
Okay, thank you. So with that, questions from council? Councilmember Dorman?
Thank you. And thank you, excuse me, Director Tagliabashi. And Joe was kind enough to spend some time on the phone with me this morning, and so I've been through all of my specific line item questions and had them answered quite satisfactorily. Thank you.
Absolutely welcome.
I would like to say there are just a couple of projects, line item projects, that when the time comes, as the mayor and Director Tagliabashi have discussed, I'll be asking for some additional discussion at the commission, community, and council level. And I'm happy that we have that opportunity. I'll be looking forward to it just on some projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the staff report? Again, I'll just state that we've had extensive conversation about the CIP prior to tonight, and appreciate, as Councilmember Dorman just said, all the additional information that you and others have provided us for consideration. So thank you.
To try to help if we can.
Absolutely. So again, seeing no public in the audience live, we'll just go ahead and have either additional council dialogue or I will again offer action to be taken. Is there dialogue or a motion to be had?
I will move adoption of resolution number 17-3420, approving the town's 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal years 2017-18 through 2021-22.
I'll second.
And please cast your vote. That passes unanimously, 3-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Excuse me, do we need to make a finding for the record that it is consistent with our general plan?
I don't believe so. Gary?
That's
you want to speak to that?
This is the overall framework. I don't think it applies to a specific one. So when a project comes up, yes.
Are you on?
Oh, yes.
That recommendation is actually part of adoption of the resolution.
Okay.
So the title of the resolution is to adopt the 5-year plan and determine the plan's consistency with the general plan.
Okay, thank you.
But
That's what the
specific
intended
determination.
motion is.
Sorry, yes. Specific determinations will also be made as these things come up for approval.
Thank you. I just didn't want to leave anything out of the motion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We can move on to our next item now, which is the municipal code amendment as presented for an introduction and waiving of the reading.
All right, Mayor and council members, before you tonight is an ordinance regarding the stopping, parking, and leaving of vehicles on streets within the town. Sergeant Hallman and the Napa County Sheriff's Office has identified several omissions in the current municipal code that are sort of gaps in what is prohibited, and requested that this be put forth for consideration by the council. This does close gaps having to do with double parking, stopping, parking in curbs, and leaving vehicles running or stopping vehicles in the street. And with that, I might ask for Sergeant Holm to come up and explain what it looks like on the ground.
Yes. You get to engage and not just give us a quarterly report tonight.
Excellent. So Sergeant John Hallman with the Napa County Sheriff's Office here in Yountville. Yeah, this ordinance, I requested it, worked quite a bit with the town manager and with Gary. It's just been frustrating over the course of the year. Early on, I started to see that whether we had double parked vehicles or on Washington Street, Madison Street, some of our major streets, Yount Street, someone would literally stop their vehicle and get out to go, well, I'm just going to go run in, and literally block traffic. And so when I started looking at what we had to deal with that, I identified that what was being done was not correct, was not appropriate. The vehicle code that was being written in the past did not apply. So we talked a lot about it, and in further research I found that due to our structure, the town has to develop an ordinance to enforce that type of activity. And that's how we ended up here today, because numerous public contacts from myself and my deputies of going out, and complaints from residents of us going out and having roadways blocked, whether it's construction vehicles. Typically, I'll be honest with you, the majority of the time it's it's like the limo buses, Ubers, Lyfts, construction vehicles. It's normally people that don't really live here. So that was probably over 90% of the people I contacted. And I would literally get to go up and say, hey, I'd like you to move, or I'm not going to be able to do anything. So that was what I came to Steve Rogers with, and I said, I need some help with that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of either of the report? Councilmember Dorman?
Thank you. So will the car or the driver get two different citations, or will there just be one for our ordinance?
So it will be one for the ordinance, just as it is now. And it will go, we are currently working on a couple different things. One is a more streamlined, better system for our citations, for parking citations, and for the town ordinance violations. We're wanting to make it something that's easy to understand. If someone does get a citation, that they can literally, even if they forget everything else because of the stress of the contact, they can look on the back, look at instructions, and resolve it. If not, contact us and we can help them find out how to resolve it. So a lot of that is being taken into consideration, and it will be one citation. They will not get two violations or two citations for one violation. We don't want to do that.
Okay, and then if they want to, I'll not put the word in quotes, fight the citation,
Sure.
What is the process for that?
Okay. So depending on the violation, specifically on this ordinance,
on this one,
it's pretty simple. There is an appeal process that we have to follow, and we contract, as the Sheriff's Department, we take care of that. That's on our end. That won't be something that the town has to deal with. And we contract with a business called Data Ticket. So if I get a parking ticket here in Yountville, I get it, there's contact information on the back. I can call them. Pretty much what they tell me is they will advise me to go to their website, and I can look up the violation. I see the fine amount, and if I say, hey, I'm fighting this didn't happen, what they're going to do is they're going to refer you to, or they're going to refer me to the first appeal process, which is going to be the local sheriff. So I'm kind of in trouble if it's me. But because of that, in the foresight of dealing with parking citations and some of the issues the first month I came here, I spent more time than I felt you should pay me for talking to people about parking citations. And so what we immediately did is I said, okay, every time we take or write out a parking citation, we're going to turn on our body-worn cameras. We're going to take a picture of the citation. We're going to take a video of the violation. And we're going to walk behind the vehicle, and we're going to get the license plate. And then you will move along. And as a supervisor, I'm able to go into our database for every deputy that writes a citation when somebody comes in. And it took me about 1 month of people coming in. I could look up their citation, ask them to have a seat, turn a 27-inch monitor around to them and just ask them, so is that your vehicle? Is that the plate? There at the red curb? Okay, how could I help you? And my complaints came down to probably about 1 a month, literally. It was immediate. So, and I know I'm giving you a long answer for your question, But they come for the appeal if, and I'll be honest with you, there was some retraining I did with some of our staff or some of our volunteers on what should or shouldn't be cited. So there were some citations that I threw out. I was able to work with town residents or other people to say, hey, be careful, but on this one I agree with you. I think that we could use a little mercy and grace and just use education. But if it gets beyond to the point where I say, hey, this is a legitimate citation, then I refer them to Data Ticket. Data Ticket, if you still want to fight it, has an appeal process where I looked at, was everything filled out right? Do I have documentation for a violation? They then are going to look at, okay, does it meet the law and all of my evidence? So a second person that I have really no contact with, it's a second appeal. If everything is done legally and right and we have the evidence, then they're still required to pay the fine. If someone from out of town or someone's a non-resident continues to say, well, I'm just not going to do it, I'm not going to pay this fine, it is referred to the DMV, and if they would like their vehicle registration to be renewed, it will be part of their registration renewal. So it's actually a pretty good system, and there are a couple of opportunities for appeal from two different people that don't talk, and just in case, I wouldn't want them to think that I'm part of the appeal process and then my deputy is the next part, because that just doesn't seem fair. You want people that are non-biased and can just look at it with fresh eyes.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, I just have one. It's probably a comment, but
Sure.
if I'm wrong, I guess it's a question, so you can correct me.
Okay.
I just wanted everyone to know, because I think this is great that we're doing this, that we are not doing it to try to make money. Because money does not come to the town, money does not go to the county, the money goes to the state. The vast majority, I think the number is like 85%. So a small portion might stay locally, but we're not doing this as a money-making activity, and the money that goes to the state goes to pay for the judges in the court system. Is that correct, for your knowledge?
Partially. So there is on the Yountville citations, there is a portion that does come to the town of Yountville, but you are absolutely correct in the fact that we're not doing this to make money. The amount of our fines is actually something we're looking at right now because they're so low compared to surrounding areas that it gets to where it's almost ineffective at times. It's cheaper for me to park in a red zone here than it is to park my car in San Francisco, which is an issue. But back to your question or your comment, what we find here in Yountville very often is through a short period of enforcement, very quickly, we don't have to write a lot of those tickets. We have to make sure, as on my staff and myself, we have to make sure that we kind of work through the days of the week and the times of the day for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then this education process happens, and then we really don't have the problem as much. We just have to kind of keep checking up on it once in a while and re-educating new limo drivers, Uber drivers, construction workers. But I really don't foresee this being a lot of citations we'll be writing, because most of the time, honestly, here, like we've talked about in the past, we really get to enjoy a 2/3 education, 1/3 enforcement relationship with the public, and it works. And so I can't tell you how many times I've gotten out of my car and had a pleasant chat with someone and explained to them why it'd be better if they just pulled into the parking lot. And I wouldn't see them again, but I'd let them know, I work here a lot. If I see you again next time, I might have to write it down for you. I would rather not, but most of the time we don't have to go there. So it's definitely, the citations are not a money-making thing for the town of Yountville or for the Sheriff's Department. It's just trying to get, we're trying to keep that there for voluntary compliance, and if we can't gain voluntary compliance, then that's just our next step, to gain compliance.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, two questions. It seems to me that car sharing is a significant issue with this situation, with the Ubers and Lyfts of the world, that it's even beyond the professional car services. Now you have average citizens that are participating in driving people. They don't either, they're not educated or they don't care what the violations are. Are you finding that there is a way to educate the general public that is behind the wheel that we see now with the Lyfts and the Ubers?
So we tend to see in our area, the nice thing about Uber or Lyft, the people that do that is probably a fairly small portion, and we may say, wow, I see a lot of them, but the reality is in our area, there's specific people that do that. And out of 100 people, it's probably not a real large number. And what I've had the opportunity to do is in Yountville and talking to my deputies, we start seeing the same people. And so we know who are people that will be very grateful for a warning and we just don't have a problem with them again, and who the people are that we've warned and cited. And so we don't have a huge crowd of people as far as when it comes to the Uber or Lyft drivers that we're dealing with, but they know, and I explain to them, if you're taking the stance of a professional driver, this is something you're doing for work. This is going to this can affect your pocketbook, it can affect your license depending on the violation, and your rating with however you're wanting to make money, because Lyft, Uber, all of these allow them to give you a rating, and people don't like to sit in the back of your car while you're being stopped by the police.
I can understand that.
As pleasant as we may try to be, it wastes their time.
The other question I had relates to signage and markings, and I noticed in the report, and I'm not sure which of you or both can address this. My concern is how much we would be required to provide for adequate signage. Is it just temporary? Is it permanent? Is it in certain locations? Could you just explain that piece?
Actually, I'd be happy to, Mayor. In most cases, it's already done. We've replaced and put signage appropriately. So in most cases, we have areas that say no standing, stopping, parking. We've changed our verbiage to account for all of that. Public Works has already been replacing those. And what this also does is in some areas where you have red zone, some of the violations are just dumb drivers. They pull up and block the sidewalk. They pull up on the sidewalk. So, no amount of signage is going to deal with those types of things. So it empowers the deputies. But in most cases, the signs are already in place and are within our normal maintenance budget for that standpoint. We're also cautious of the sign aesthetic, because we know that we do not necessarily want. But that's a catch-22, because in order to properly enforce it, we do have to have the appropriate signage.
So little or no increase in signage, but potentially changing in content of signage.
And I would say in most cases, the signage is already in place.
Okay, good. Then I looked to the two of you and I got the answer from over here. So, seeing no other questions and seeing no members of the public, I'll entertain action by the council. Whose turn is it?
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Introduce and waive.
And introduce and waive the reading of ordinance number 17-463, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Yountville adding section 10.28.220 to chapter 10.28 of Title 10 of the Yountville Municipal Code regarding stopping, parking, or leaving vehicles upon streets.
Is there a second?
I second.
And we will be voting momentarily. Please vote. And again, is a 3-0 unanimous vote. Thank you. Sergeant, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll move right ahead to the next item, legislative opposition letter for SB 649 consideration.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight I'm here to share and request your consideration and authorization for the town to draft and for the mayor's signature a opposition to Senate Bill 649, which is a wireless telecommunications facility. This piece of legislation is a really, really, really bad local government piece of legislation. It takes away local control over small cells, gives away, I want to stress, gives away the public right away, and allows the telecom communications carriers to just come in and plop things on our our investment in our streetlights, street poles without any control. And this is something that we're not alone, and the league is really working on a lot. I want to let the public know we actually support small cells. If you may recall, in 2015, we spent a lot of time trying to come up with an ordinance that would be forward thinking to encourage small cell stealth type things, hidden, but ones that would meet the town's design aesthetic. This particular legislation would take our 25-page ordinance and throw it out. So I'm a little passionate about what it is, but when we talk about maintaining the small town charm of Yountville, the aesthetic, we've provided tools that allow the telecommunications carriers to improve and in reasonable. They're looking for an easy, low-hanging fruit, and really want to stress that this is bad legislation, and it really creates a real concern over what could be the potential runaway trend line if other industries choose to do an end round on this type of legislation around local government control of their operations and activities in our community. I don't know if the attorney will be as passionate about how bad this bill is as I am, but anyway, I know you guys know the gist on this, so I won't say anything more.
Okay, thank you. Gary, did you want to add any passion to that?
Yeah, I would just add that if this bill becomes law in its current form, it would require the town to approve administratively without any kind of discretionary review small cells on the town's streetlights, traffic poles, and other similar infrastructure in the public right-of-way without any discretionary review.
Okay, sounds daunting. Any questions, Councilmember Mueller?
I do have one question. So this is a Senate bill, so it's already been approved by the Senate, because we could all, does it make any sense for us to also send a copy to our Senator Dodd?
We will. He'll be copied on that.
All right,
but this
great.
is where the push is on now, and the feeling is that the local government assembly committee does not necessarily see this the same way the Senate. It got rushed out of Senate, and there's a feeling that there may have been some general acquiescence on that, and expecting that this will, but we can't take that for granted. We really need to let our local representative, and I really do want to stress that we have a good, both of ours are attentive, and when we do say something, and when you guys call and talk to them, and you talk to their chiefs of staff, and we give them specifics about why it's something that is either good for Yountville, bad for Yountville, they do listen, and I think it's important to recognize that.
Right. Any other questions, Councilmember Dorman?
Where you left off is kind of where I want to start. Is I do perceive from my limited experience that Yountville has a lot of credibility when we speak to our reps. When I read this letter, however, it seems to me that an advocate wrote it, that it is a form letter. I don't have opposition to trying to head off the legislation, or at least redirect it to be palatable. But I would like to see the letter more felt from us, rather than bold and capital and that kind of thing.
I got it.
Okay.
I won't sign this letter the way it's written currently.
Okay.
Not only do we have to add additional specific content as it relates to Yountville, but I absolutely agree that the tone and tenor of this needs to be appropriate for us and not just boilerplated. So I get you there. Was there anything else that you wanted to comment on?
And if I could just, when the league sends these out, when you see bold and yellow, that is actually, we have a vernacular, and that is please insert things that are appropriate to your agency and your relationship. So,
but we can also completely rewrite, eliminate, or add as appropriate for us, but the general tone and messaging would be to oppose the legislation. Yeah. Did you want to add anything else to that, Steve? Okay. It's a good point. Again, seeing no members of the public, I'll invite action by the council.
I would move to authorize the mayor to sign a letter in opposition to Senate Bill 649 relating to the permitting of wireless and small cell telecommunications facilities.
And Michelle, we still have the old vote up on the screen.
And send copies to Senator Dodd.
It's actually in
Yes.
the letter that it's copying Senate and Assembly and our League of California Cities rep. So is that
I don't, hold on a second. Where does it say?
the bottom of the letter, it has those CCs on it.
Okay, sorry there, okay.
So we do have a motion. I believe Councilmember Mueller is
Second.
looking to make a second, is getting to the proper screen. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
See if this replaces what's up there. There we go.
Yes, so that is correct, a 3-0 unanimous vote for the legislation, and the actual copy will be shared with the council prior to us. Okay, we'll have that conversation. Okay, sure glad I have tomorrow morning open. All right. Not anymore. Okay, let's move on to item E, legislative subpoena. I know we've covered this before, but this is the first time we're talking about it, well, in this setting. Sure.
Yes, Mayor and council members, before you tonight is a legislative subpoena for certain records in the possession of the county clerk recorder, Mr. John Tudor. It relates to the use of affordable housing. It relates to the use of affordable housing within the town.
A little bit closer, Gary. I guess they're not hearing it very well. Just belt it out.
How's that?
There you go.
Yeah.
It relates to the use of affordable housing in the town and the use of related properties and the deed restrictions on one of those properties. The records that are sought by this legislative subpoena are relevant to show ownership, use, and whether or not certain properties are owner occupied as required by the deed restrictions. This legislative subpoena relates to a valid legislative function of the council, specifically the obligation to ensure a sufficient stock of affordable housing within the town, and it specifically relates to an investigation into whether certain property is being used as required by the deed restrictions. I do have one recommended change based on my discussions with the county over the last few days, and that is to strike the word submitted from the records that are being requested in the resolution, paragraph 2B, 2E, and 2G.
Hold on a second, 2B.
Page 3 of 7.
Let me pull it up. Yeah, on page 3 in the resolution, paragraph 2B, 2E, and 2G, strike the word submitted. And in the subpoena itself, on the second page, paragraph 3B, 3E, and 3G, strike the word submitted. Based on my discussions with the county, it's possible that a particular property tax exemption would be in place on a property, but not necessarily submitted in that year. So to avoid any confusion, I recommend removing the word submitted. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions of the report? And one thing I just wanted to point out, the reason for this action being recommended is there is not a compulsion by the county representative to, there's actually a legal prohibition for him to present this information to us without this action. Is that correct?
Yes. So there are some records that the county clerk recorder considers confidential, and in the absence of something compelling, such as this subpoena, is not able to disclose them. That's correct.
Very good. Thank you. Any further discussion or action on this item, the legislative subpoena? Is there a motion?
Hold on a second. Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 17-3421, a resolution of the town council for the town of Yountville issuing a legislative subpoena for certain records in possession of the recorder, county clerk for the county of Napa with the following amendments in the resolution, that we delete the words submitted from sections 2B, 2E, and 2G, and in the subpoena itself, we remove the word submitted from sections 3B, 3E, and 3G.
Is that correct, Gary?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. When the screen comes up, please cast your vote. And that passes unanimously, 3-0. Thank you very much. Thank you for working on that, Gary. And we'll just wait and see what kind of compulsion that gives.
We'll be sending it over tomorrow.
Thank you. Next up, item 10F, employment agreement, considering adoption of a resolution as it pertains to the salary of our town manager.
Yes, so this year at the conclusion of the performance evaluation of the town manager, who received a 4.0, exceeds expectations. Before you tonight is a resolution that adjusts his salary, that was also discussed during the annual performance evaluation, provides a 3.3% cost of living adjustment, which is also required in the current provides a 3.3% cost of living adjustment, which is also required in the current employment agreement, because that is what's provided to other management employees, and provides a $7,500 one-time performance bonus, which is also provided in his employment agreement based on the 4.0 exceeds expectations overall rating provided. So this resolution effectuates all four of those things, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Seeing no members of the public here, any further discussion? I know that we've had a subcommittee working on this with Steve, and we've had the entire council working with Steve on this for a number of meetings and over several months. And as the town attorney correctly stated, many of these terms have been put in the service contract with Steve, and he has received very strong support in performance evaluation from all of the council. I know that all of us have also heard from the members of the community how much they appreciate the effort Steve puts in. He's a representative of our entire team. They learn from the top down and share from all levels, that kind of commitment to our community, and this is some recognition that I frankly, and we all agree, is earned and deserved. Councilmember Moeller?
I'd just like to also make a comment that I think Yountville is extremely fortunate to have Steve Rogers as our town manager. I think that we certainly are, and I hear it all the time, really, the envy of the Valley. We have a very strong budget, a pristine town, a town that everybody wants to come to, and I think that just doesn't happen on its own. And I think we've seen a lot of changes over the 8+ years that Steve has been here, and I just really want to say thank you. And all we really have is, some money, to show that with. But I think on top of that, I think I not only speak for myself, but so many people that we're very happy to have Steve as our town manager. So great job. Well done. Thanks, Steve.
We did consider giving you the engraved bottle of wine like we do for... but the contract was written differently. Councilmember Dorman?
I don't know anything but the Steve era, and I will say from sitting on the back row and writing a totally random email, I didn't understand what the council said about this or that. Steve responded right away. To just on Sunday when I was in Houston and the power went out, and I texted Steve and he responded right away. So, and he has certainly eased my passage from the back row to the council, and I appreciate that, and I fully support you, and you get a lot of good press in the neighborhood, and you deserve it. Thank you.
And we'll just recognize that our two colleagues that are not here tonight share in our appreciation and support of the work that you've done, and we count on you continuing to do. Your commitment, not just in the role as town manager, but as a very active member of the community, is very much appreciated. So, did you want to say anything?
I do want to say, well,
remember, less is more sometimes when you're going to get what you want.
In this particular case, I just want to, I want to say, one, I'm humbled and appreciative. This is, as we hit on 10 years, it's been an incredible opportunity, and I continue to look at what we can do and how we can continue to work. I'm very fortunate to have a council that is supportive, listens, challenges, as appropriately so, and past council members that have done so. And I'm really very fortunate to have a really good quality team of employees that are here and that are committed to doing the right thing and then working on improving the life of Yountville. And even though at times it's challenging, we have to recognize that our residents don't always agree on everything. And, you know, we really do try our best to work on that. But I think, you know, I couldn't be successful without the team and without your support. So a lot of that goes to you all.
Thank you. I also just want to thank Julie Baldia for the extra support and work she put into supporting our dialogue and putting a lot of the materials together with your contract and considerations. So thank you. With that, I entertain a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make I'd be honored to make a motion that we approve resolution number 17-3422, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Yountville, increasing the salary of the town manager in accordance with his employment agreement.
And I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Please cast your votes. And that is a unanimous 3-0 vote. Steve, thank you again for your commitment to the town of Yountville. Moving ahead, we did speak earlier tonight, the staff informational report we were going to give about the PG&E power outage on Sunday. I think we covered that fairly extensively earlier. Do we have any other staff reports at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to council meeting reports. Very briefly, I did attend the Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District meeting today, where we adopted the 2017-18 budget and also appointed Mayor Leon Garcia from American Canyon as the Flood Control Board representative for the North Bay Watershed Association. Also, I'll jump down to other reports. We do have an NVTA, Transportation Authority Board meeting tomorrow. I will be testifying on Thursday in Sacramento at the Capitol at the Little Hoover Commission hearing on the Yountville Veterans Home. It's a public hearing being held all morning with the Calvet Secretary in Bassiani and other interested stakeholders, including 3 members of the Veterans Home. And I'll be testifying on behalf of the support the town of Yountville has for the Veterans Home and some of the plans for modernization and upgrading of services that Calvet is considering there. We've already covered the PG&E power outage and the response, and we'll be continuing a dialogue with reps from PG&E to do what all we can and to inform our residents how they can best be prepared for future outages, because we can count on them, unfortunately. Are there any other meetings on which to be reported? Yes, Councilmember Mueller.
I attended the Environmental Quality Policy Committee for the California League of Cities on Friday, June the 9th, and the big hot topic was Senate Bill 231. This is where local government's going to have to spend a lot of money cleaning up their stormwater. And again, I mentioned this before, I'm so thankful to our staff and Public Works that we are not going to be subjected to this because of the getting in front of it with the state and showing them just how clean and pristine our town is. But it was this first item we had a big joint committee with the Transportation Policy Committee, and it was all over trying to add the word stormwater under the definition for sewer so that they could make this not subject to 218. I voted no. The majority voted yes. I felt that by just changing a definition, then it really wasn't transparent, because this is going to have a pretty significant increase in people's property tax bills. So, and then on the positive side, we discussed and made some suggested changes to SB 5 and AB 18. These are both bills that have to do with drought and water and park and climate and a lot of stuff. But the good news is, which I kept my mouth very quiet at this point, there's a minimum that's going to go to a small town if it's under a certain population. That's actually pretty significant. It's about $125,000 in SB 5 and $250,000 in AB 18 just for parks. And so we left that minimum in for small towns, so it wasn't going to be voted out. I thought that was very good. And then that's all for updates. We have trash board on Thursday. And one council comment I'd like to make is that maybe a future agenda item we could look at for our trash rates in town. We really don't have any type of a fee that we put on those. I think St. Helena is going to be increasing theirs, and maybe we can take a look at that and discuss that with council and see if there's interest in having a franchise fee.
If the council has consensus direction, we can do a little bit of research and review and bring that back as a discussion item.
We may need to wait until we have a more complete council.
This is just consensus to do the work, and bring it back to you.
I'm saying that we want to get a majority of the council to accept the request for consideration to add it to the agenda at a future date. That's what I'm just saying. So you can consider it, and you can put it out to the. I would want the entire council to be able to weigh in on it. If they can email you directly about adding
the
it to.
request is just this would be a future discussion item that we would do a level of analysis, and this has come up a couple times in the past several years.
I thought I was just trying to make it official. I think it came up during the budget meetings, and did you get?
In most cases, like Calistoga uses the franchise, has a small franchise fee, and they use it for street improvement. So it's in that, I mean, it's really, again, this is the protocol process for how does an item move from discussion to a broader discussion, and that staff will do a little homework, and then obviously, I mean, we're probably talking several council meetings away.
Okay. Any meeting reports or comments?
I actually have a question on your comment on Little Hoover. Do you know whether they're going to record or broadcast that testimony?
They do record it. I don't know if they live broadcast, but they do record their public hearings.
Okay, thank you.
The one other thing that I have coming up next week, June 28th through July 1st, I'll be in Monterey at the League Executive Forum and the Executive Board meeting. So might bring some additional news back on legislative activity from that. I believe that's all of our reports and announcements, and seeing no other business, we don't have a closed session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to our next meeting. We will not be meeting on July 4th, so our next regular scheduled meeting would be Tuesday, July 18th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
There is a motion.
Second.
All in favor, please cast your final vote for this evening. No, we don't have to do it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There we go. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.